There is good news and there is bad news. The good news is my wife cooked cream of wheat. The bad news is my wife cooked cream of wheat. And you may want to avert your eyes. Oh, my poor, poor pan. What I thought we might do in this video, since the opportunity has arisen, is show exactly how to clean stainless steel cookware. We're going to try and restore this guy. It's in pretty bad shape. Do they make his and hers pans, just as a side matter of curiosity? And we're also going to look at some bacon grease, some hazing, some rainbow stains, and some of that stuff that gets kind of stuck on when you do high temp sears of steaks and more. Let's jump in and get started. Now, when I have a pan like this, which doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I start cleaning it at a low level, and then I ratchet up my cleaning power depending upon necessity. What I'm gonna do with this guy, this stuff is really burnt on. She made the cream of wheat with milk, and apparently forgot the pan, and that stuff is just fused on there. What I'm gonna do is fill this guy with water first, and we're going to bring that water up to a simmer and try and deglaze, if you will, some of this stuff with boiling water first, and then we will go from there. Okay, I've got some water in this guy, and we're gonna get that boiling. Okay, while that water is coming up to temperature, let's run through the tools you need to clean stainless steel cookware. Here is what I like to call my arsenal. Here are the tools I use. On the left-hand side are the ones that I consider absolutely necessary, and these are what I use for everyday messes, even everyday messes that seem like a big disaster, but are really not. On the right side are the big guns, the heavy weapons. These are the things I use when there is a true disaster like this cream of wheat. Now, I think everyone in this audience is smart enough to know about a scrubby sponge and dish soap. I use Dawn. It's really good at cutting grease. It's also really good at cutting through my hands, it seems. It seems to really tear them up, so sometimes I also use the Palmolive or the Palmolive, as my Italian friends like to say. Also, I like to have a brush. I like to have some white vinegar. We'll show in a few minutes how to use that to get rid of haze and rainbow stains. And of course, barkeeper's friend. Like my wife describes me after I've had a couple of drinks, it's mildly abrasive. And if you're brand loyal, know that All-Clad makes a cleaner that is essentially the same thing. And it's great for kind of everyday messes, especially if you cook protein, something like a steak, on a gas cooktop where the flame goes up and around the sides of the pan get really hot. You get some stuck on grease there. It's essentially like starting a seasoning, which we don't want on our stainless steel, but that will power right through that. Side note here, they make Barkeeper's Friend in the powder version. I prefer the liquid version simply because when I wash dishes, I've always got a stack of dishes drying and draining right beside the sink. Sometimes when I shake that powdered version, there's a little dust cloud of Barkeeper's Friend that I don't like drifting towards my clean dishes, so I prefer the liquid version of the Barkeeper's Friend. Now, over on the right side, the heavy guns here are the SOS pads, the chain mails, the stainless steel scrubbies. I don't like to use these unless they are absolutely necessary. With these are a little harsher and you run the risk of perhaps putting a few scratches. So I don't like to use these on the outsides of my pans unless absolutely necessary. I do use them when I need to on the cooking surfaces. And while we're still waiting on this water, let's look at an everyday mess that seems like a big disaster, but if you follow the right steps and use the right tools, it's actually not a big deal. So this is day-to-day stainless steel cookware cleaning. Here I cooked up a mess of bacon for some BLTs for a Sunday dinner. Made 3 panfuls of bacon. The Sammy's absolutely delicious, but I was left with this. Ouch. So here's how I clean this up. Now, when the pan was still hot, when I was cooking the bacon, when the bacon was done, I got rid of as much grease as possible, poured that out, left the pan overnight. The next day, I take a wooden spatula scraper and scrape out as much grease and gunk as possible. Then I put water in the pan, about 1/4 inch of water, and put that on a burner and turn the heat on. And what I'm going to essentially do here is deglaze the pan. Of course, if you were making a steak and deglazing for a pan sauce, you would be one step ahead of the game already. But I bring that water up to temp, and here I add some of that grease cutting dish soap because lots of this stuff is going to go down the drain and I want that grease broken up. I don't want it solidifying in the plumbing anywhere. Then I take that wooden spatula and scrape off as much of that gunk as possible. Got a lot of it out. I think I did a pretty good job of getting most of that stuff out of there already. Now we're going to move over to the sink. And here you want to make sure your water is hot. You don't want to take a hot pan from the stove and put it under cold running water. You could shock it and run the risk of a little bit of warping. So with hot water here, I take my brush and some dish soap and give that a good scrub. Then I move up to a little barkeeper's friend, give it a scrub with that. And then finally a wash with a soft sponge and a little bit of dish soap, give it a dry. And we've gone from this seemingly a disaster, huge mess, with just a few simple steps using the right tools and the right procedures to this. And that pan looks pretty doggone good. Now, sometimes you will wash a stainless steel pan and it will be clean and you dry it and you notice a little bit of a haze effect or a little bit of a rainbow effect. What is going on there? All you need to do to get rid of those is just use some of that white vinegar. Pour it in, rub it around, rinse the pan out and dry it again, and that will get rid of haze and rainbow stains. What about rivets? Is there anything worse than gunky rivets on a nice pan? Here is when I do like to use the SOS pad. I just get the SOS pad, use my fingertip and go around those rivets, and that does a good job of cleaning around the rivets. The chainmail, I've tried to use the chainmail. It's just too big. The links are too big to get in those tiny areas. The SOS pad, that steel wool, much finer, and you can kind of get in those cracks a little bit easier. So what about the big disaster cream of wheat mess? Is the pan ruined? Can we save it? I've got boiling water in the pan and I'm trying to scrape some of this stuff off and it is just not coming out, having very little effect. I tried the brush, no effect there. Barkeeper's friend, actually at this point, not helping very much. Let's keep ratcheting up. And here, if you're enjoying this video and finding it helpful, a nice thing to do is like and subscribe, and you'll see more like it down the road. So here, I just went to the big guns. I got the chainmail out, I got the SOS pad out, and just went with some muscle power and elbow grease. And I went back and looked at the raw video. I scrubbed this pan intensely for over 8 minutes. Holy cow. And we saved it. We saved the pan. Not too shabby. I'm happy to say I've had this pan over 20 years and we have saved the pan and restored it, and it is back in service and cooking again. I think we've learned a couple of very important lessons here. The first is that no matter what my wife says, and on paper, no matter how important it seems to give my son a hot breakfast before school, depending on who's cooking, it may be better to just give him a bowl of Fruit Loops, a Pop-Tart, and send him on his way. The second is that stainless steel is tough. This cooking surface, it stood up not only to the mess, but scrubbing 8 minutes with a chainmail scrubber. Got some tiny scratches in there, but stainless steel cookware, very tough. And no matter what you've done to your pan, there's a good chance you can bring it back if you use the right tools and right cleaning methods. Now, somewhere on the screen are links to other videos you might find enjoyable and helpful. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time on Uncle Scott's Kitchen.